Oh, okay, it's early. It's a Friday morning and it's early. My name is Dawna Levenson. I have the privilege of being one of two assistant deans for admissions at MIT Sloan, and I want to thank you for deciding to spend your early Friday morning, first day of March, here with us. I also want to thank everybody from around the globe who has zoomed in to also spend time with us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope that you will all, after this next hour or so, find it was a good decision. What we hope to do is to share with you a little bit about what the MIT Sloan experience is all about. Excuse me. Just to help me understand a little bit about who we have here in the audience. This is by no means binding at all. How many of you, by a show of hands, are planning on applying in our upcoming round 3? Okay, and how many of you are thinking this is more like next year at this point, or the year after? Great. What I will tell you is it is never too soon to start exploring your MBA options, and what you're doing today is exactly what I think the right thing is to do, and I actually encourage you to attend info sessions like this at all of the schools that might interest you. So what we're going to do, and I'm not going to do this alone, I'm going to do it with the help of some of our students who have also gotten up early on a Friday morning, and I actually don't think you have classes on Friday for the most part, so they could be sleeping. It's not like they have a 9 o'clock class and they said, oh, I'll get up at 8, to share their stories and experiences with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start with a short video. Don't worry, for those of you who really came here to get some tips on applications, as you think about your application, we'll cover some of that as well.
What's special about MIT students is they really have a drive to learn and to convert that learning into impact in the world.
And they don't take themselves too seriously, but they take their mission very, very seriously. There's always kind of been this focus on how do you advance, society, and that's in the founding of MIT, and I think that lives on through the way we think that the Sloan School.
We are in the business of helping people become better leaders, principled, innovative leaders who improve the world.
You never hear somebody bragging about how much their startup just raised or all of the amazing job offers that they got.
People just don't think to boast about all the amazing stuff that they're doing because they're focused on doing it.
You have a very high density of people that really aspire to change the world and make it a better place.
An example of that is the action learning labs that Sloan is famous for. I've helped a small Peruvian company identify targets for acquisition.
I did a class called USA Lab where I spent 2 weeks in Oregon in a small fishing town.
We were partnered with a company that was bringing English education to rural Vietnamese students.
These are things that aren't necessarily just learning business and doing cases. This is an experience that is much more immersive. The accessibility is definitely a differentiating factor when it comes to the faculty.
I really view our students as collaborators and colleagues.
Being able to have those conversations and actually get their perspectives on what's going on in the real world has been very, very valuable.
I asked a professor, and she says that when she's teaching here, it feels like she's having a conversation around the dinner table.
So when I teach, I'm always amazed how much of it is really a two-way stream.
The focus on entrepreneurship that actually makes a difference and is purposeful and impactful was really what drew me here.
Coming to MIT Sloan completely changed my perspective on the business world and just the impact that I think that I can have in the future.
And as someone who grew up in the heart of Silicon Valley, for Sloan to say, we are invested in our female students, and it matters to us that they're moving up in the career ladder, that was a really important thing for me.
It introduced me to the entrepreneurial ecosystem that I fell in love with, a ton of different resources that I've been able to benefit from, and that was kind of the moment when I knew that this was the right place for me.
I remember calling my parents at the end of orientation and just saying, I found my place.
Okay. Would our panelists come on up? So I'm assuming that everyone here has done your homework, which means we're focused our conversation today primarily on our 2-year MBA. That you all know by now, it is a 1-semester core, 3 semesters pretty much to shape the curriculum as you see fit. We're going to talk a little bit more about that with our panelists and how they have shaped their experiences. It's also part of a portfolio of programs. And so here at MIT Sloan, not only do we have our 2-year MBA, but we also have 2 executive MBA programs, our Sloan Fellows program, which is a 1-year full-time program where our students have on average 14 years experience, in our executive MBA. I think if you were walking through the hall, you may have seen their preview workshop. So this is a 20-month part-time program. People have about 17 years of experience. We also have a Master of Finance program and a Master's of Business Analytics for early stage professionals. And we have our LGO program, Leaders for Global Operations, where you can actually get an MBA in an engineering degree in 2 years. Anybody here interested in LGO? Okay, if you are, great. We actually have representatives. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Sharna Bollinger. I'm with the admissions team at LGO, so if anyone has any questions, I'll be hanging around afterwards.
Great, so we have Sharona here, and we actually have an LGO on our panel. So, and the reason why I'm saying this to you is because we really are, we believe very strongly that there's tremendous benefit for everyone in having this portfolio of programs. In addition to your 1-semester core, when you start taking electives, you'll be taking electives with people from all of our different programs who come here with different backgrounds and different experiences, which really, we believe strongly, enrich the classroom experience. All right, enough from me. Panelists, are you ready? Great. Can you introduce yourselves, please, to our audience around the globe? Please introduce your name, what you did before Sloan, and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, and so if you don't have summer plans, that's cool. But if you do have summer plans, let us know what you do in the summer, okay? And one other note, please, we're pretty casual around here. If you suddenly feel you need a cup of coffee or something else to eat, don't hesitate to come on down and help yourselves. All right.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Sahaj Lochim. I'm a first-year MBA. Prior to Sloan, I worked at Ernst & Young in their digital practice, doing a little bit of design and consulting work. And this summer, I will be going back to consulting. I'm going to BCG in New York.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Izan Lulu. I'm the 2nd-year LGU student. Before LGU, I was working at Dow Chemical Company in Freeport, Texas. This coming summer, you told me the summer coming or the summer we had before?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay, so
tell us about
the summer before.
They want to know about you. Tell them everything.
So the summer before, I was doing my internship at Caterpillar. We are required to do a 6-month internship, so I was doing that. And then after MIT, I've been working for Caterpillar full-time.
I'm Gabriela Santiago. I'm a 2nd-year MBA student. Prior to Sloan, I did probably 5 years bouncing around the startup scene in Boston. Most recent startup job case, which was in the Boston Globe this week, so it was great. Search it. I will be going to BCG here in Boston after graduation.
My name is Asia Sturtz-Nickel. I'm a 1st-year MBA student. Prior to Sloan, I was working for an American financial services company in Poland on the technology side of the business. And I am transitioning to investment banking. I'll be at Goldman Sachs this summer in the real estate investment banking group.
Right. And then can I say, so next year then Asia will not only be a 2nd-year student, but she'll also be a significant other in our program. Her husband will be a 1st-year student next year. So, all right. So I mentioned 1-semester core, 3 semesters to really shape the curriculum. To the extent that you have an interest in either entrepreneurship or finance or enterprise management, you can do one of 3 tracks. To the extent that you're interested in sustainability or healthcare or data analytics, you can do one of 3 certificates. My guess is that everyone in this room, including maybe even 1 or 2 of you, I'm just kidding, are curious as to know what the difference is between the tracks and certificates, and could you possibly do one of each? So think about the tracks. First of all, tracks are specific only to our 2-year MBAs. And our track is really building a set of skills around a particular area. Our certificates, again, healthcare, sustainability, and analytics, are really applying it to a particular area. And certificates are not open just to two-year MBAs. So all of our Sloan students are eligible to do certificates. And in fact, we even open them up to the extent that there's capacity to the greater MIT community as well. I'm wondering if each of you could share with us a little bit about how you've shaped the curriculum to meet your own personal interests and goals.
Absolutely. Do we need to use the mic for the people on the thing, or?
Microphones, yes. I'll do that, sure. I think it helps, not necessarily in this room, but for others. Yeah, let's split them.
All right. So I'm actually doing both. I am doing the enterprise management track and then also the certificate.
I love that.
Which is great. It's awesome. My kind of strategy coming into Sloan after core, since it was a one semester core, I wanted to kind of split my time between three areas. One was strategy. Sloan has a ton of great strategy courses, entrepreneurship, which is one of the key parts of the MIT ecosystem, and then just kind of analytics and technical courses. So this semester I'm taking Analytics Edge, a seminar on analytics, and then I'm taking actually Python with undergrads in the rest of MIT, which is also awesome. So really there's a lot of variety and a lot of levers you can pull in order to kind of customize your career to whatever you see fit. So although I'm going to consulting in the summer, I'll probably be doing tech PM roles for full time. So just kind of in anticipation of that, I'm trying to get a lot of skill sets in each of those buckets.
So yeah, being an LGO student, you have to get 2 degrees. Basically, you have I'm doing a mechanical engineering program and also the MBA. But so for the mechanical, I try to do general mechanical engineering. So I didn't want to take any track. So because we have a summer coming up, I knew that if I load myself with a lot of work, it would be a little bit difficult. My thesis coming up and all this stuff. So I decided to wait a little bit until my the spring semester, and then took as many classes that I needed. So I concentrated myself on all my engineering classes so that I can be more relaxed on my last term, where I will be able to write my thesis. Because another requirement that we have is after the work term, you have to write a thesis. So I didn't take any concentration, no tracks, and make everything more relaxed for me, and then focus on what I want to do is to manufacture engineering.
Does this one? Okay, I think it works. For as far as curriculum goes, I did the enterprise management track. I'm actually all done with it already. I only have 1 semester left, so that's good. I think I didn't really take like a very kind of hard approach to like, these are the specific classes I want to take. I did want to take what I called Core 2.0 in my spring semester of the first year. I had absolutely no traditional like business training. I did liberal arts in undergrad. So for me, it was really important to not only get the fundamentals, but get like the second tier fundamentals. So I took all of the core electives in the spring, took like operations and finance and all of that kind of stuff pretty early on. It set a really good foundation to really explore this second year. So I've gotten a chance to like take any class that I wanted just because I took care of the prereqs really early on. And I'm kind of more focused on trying to get like a diversity of coursework than I am on trying to like zero in, just because given my background is what I was looking for. One of the things I will say about the tracks is at least the enterprise management track allows you to do a lab in your first semester, which is I think it's the only way you can do a lab. I don't know if any of the other tracks do it, which is really cool for me as I was thinking about potentially going into consulting. So I work with a large CPG company here in Boston for my project, and it was a very interesting way to kind of get exposure into what a consulting job could be very early on. It also kind of gives people exposure to all sorts of companies. There's tech companies that do it, there's startups that do it. So just something to think about when you're kind of thinking about the early stages of your MBA.
So I signed up for the finance track. And I think one of the great things about that track was we had a seminar where part of it was having professionals who work in finance in very different areas come in and speak to us. I also took the finance elective in my first semester, and for me, because I have zero background in finance and I'm going to be in a pretty intense internship this summer, it was really important to spend the second semester of my first year focused on finance classes. So taking a number of those in preparation. I'm also really looking forward to next year when I can go in and explore and do something, take sort of a more diverse course load. But to me, it's been really important to have the choice around how I spend my time in this second semester of my first year, so that I'm really able to focus on my areas of sort of weakness and the things that I feel are necessary for my own success.
Great. So just as you all have flexibility in terms of shaping your curriculum, our faculty have a lot of flexibility in terms of how they actually teach their content. You will take classes that are case-based. You will take classes that are traditional lectures and problem sets. You'll take classes that are a mix. And you'll also take many classes that are project-based. We have a group of project-based courses that we call our action learning lab classes, which really emphasize the concept of the best way to learn is to really study something and then to actually apply what you've learned in a real life experience. And so we have a variety of these action learning lab classes where you're working on solving a real project for a real company. You're working in teams. You're spending time here. You're also spending time in many cases on site at the company working with them, which in many cases means that there's a travel component to them. These lab classes center around either a geography or a particular topic. So there's China lab, there's India lab, there's Israel lab, but there's also analytics lab and healthcare lab, and you name it. And so I was wondering if a couple of you, all of you don't necessarily have to talk about what, if any, lab, I know you just mentioned you had done a lab, other lab classes that you may have done and what that experience was like.
Okay, so I might be the only person that has. So yeah, I think that.
We have a lab at the end.
Oh,
too.
great.
So you can go first.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about it. Enterprise Management Lab is a lab that you do in during core, and I think it's one of it. I think at the moment, I will admit I was a little bit overwhelmed by that idea, given that I had no business background driving into business school, and the first semester can be just a little bit like, there's a lot of stuff going on. You haven't taken a test in like 6 years, like what is this? But I think what it allowed me is to like really balance my curriculum and like expose me to like a whole different world. It also allowed me to get really close to my team. So we had a team of 6 students, none of which were in my Ocean, which is like your 80-person group that you take all your core classes with. They were all from very different backgrounds, different countries, and just like coming, thinking together about our project and working with the client was just a very good experience. We were lucky that our client was right here in Boston, so we could go like almost every other week. They were really open to like just us being there and asking them questions. And I think it was like my first real exposure to like having that kind of like working relationship. And it also kind of like opened our eye, at least it opened my eyes to like, I'd never thought about CPG or like how those companies run or like, these like enormous like global, because especially it was like a global focused project. We were thinking about doing e-commerce in 7 different international markets. That was the project. So yeah, it was a great experience. I really loved working with my team, but it did pose like a different challenge given that it was like that first semester. I wonder, if I'd done it a little bit later on, I think it would have just given me a little bit more time to like really give into the project and think about it. But I also think that having done it that first semester, it exposed me to a lot more things that shaped my curriculum later on.
I also did a lab for enterprise management. So mine was the opposite in terms of kind of company size. So when I first started at Sloan, I had the classic shiny object syndrome that I just wanted to work for the largest company. I want to work for Apple, Amazon, all of that stuff. And my enterprise management project actually ended up being with like the complete opposite, a tiny 2-person startup out of Boston that came out of MIT called Hey Charlie. And what it does is it tries to use your mobile phone, your iPhone or your Android phone to help people that are recovering from opioid addiction using digital phenotyping. So it tries to like affect people's behaviors using a variety of data analytics tools. So that was a really cool experience. Since it was kind of an MIT founded startup, we had ridiculous amounts of access. Like the founders would come here every week. We would sit down with them for 2 hours a week. And it was just an awesome experience. We were able to kind of inform their business strategy at a pretty ground level. They were just going out to kind of investors. So we were able to kind of get in on that experience and take a look at how startup life is, not for me, but it's a really exciting life for a lot of people. So it's really awesome to see that. I think going forward, it helps you, at least from a career perspective, as if you do start recruiting, it's a great lab to have because you can get some real experience on your resume. First semester, you can use a lot of the stuff you're using in classes and directly apply it. So OP, comms, some of the classes we take, which are new and people usually haven't taken them in undergrad, are really great classes to kind of practice in real time. And I think going forward, I got my eye on G-Lab, which is the global global entrepreneurship lab that happens in the kind of fall if you're second year, and then maybe India too. Who knows?
Right, so while it's not a requirement for our students, it may be a requirement, there's usually a lab requirement tied to a track or certificate. I think the majority of our students really value the experience that most of them take one, many of them take two. I've actually had panelists take three, and yes, I have met someone along the way who's actually taken 4 lab classes over the course of their 2 years. So it's really a wonderful experience for our students. I want to do ask one more question related to faculty, which is in fact, or just tell you about how amazing our faculty are. Each and every one of our faculty members is a leader in his or her field. But they are also incredibly approachable. They are here in great part because of the students with whom they get to engage. It is not uncommon at all to walk through our cafeteria and see one of our faculty sitting down with a couple of students talking about whatever might be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that day. And these relationships don't just end at the end of your 2 years. As we travel around the globe and talk to alums, many of them will reflect on a recent interaction with a faculty member where they had a problem at work and they were wondering how Professor so-and-so might address that, sent him or her an email, and not only did they get a response, but they got a willingness to help out without hesitation. So I was wondering if perhaps some of you have a favorite faculty story that you'd be willing to share with the audience.
Yeah, I have one. No, I don't think I need this now. So, okay, so during the summer, we take our core classes for LGO, and one of my favorite professors was my operation management professor. So when we started the class, he told us one thing that I will never forget. He said, "Be sure that the dumbest guy in this class will have 3 job offers." And then at that point, I realized that I'm gonna be part of a really cool program. So Maine was really open to us, and every time I needed something, every time I had a question outside class, it was there for us. But the point that I want to mention is that when I was doing my thesis, he wasn't my advisor, and he's a guy for operation management, supply chain. So I needed somebody that I could trust and that could help me with the project that I was working on. And when I contacted, I approached him. He was there. Actually, he called me. He took his time. We spent about 2 hours working on the project that I was given to do. And it really touched me. It's not a lot of professors you will see actually do that. I have also one of my engineering professors. I took a class with him that really touched me. And this happened here when I MIT. When I was at the school as an undergrad, you cannot have a professor where you have a personal problem, you can bring it to the professor and then he's willing to help you. I had a personal problem back home in the Ivory Coast, and I was supposed to be taking an exam, and the engineering professor came to me, realized I wasn't, passionate that I used to. So he came to me and he said, "Look, Bizarre, I know you're not feeling well. What's going on?" So it took time, understand what's the problem that I was having, and then he made sure that every time calling me, make sure that I was doing well, and I will never forget that. Never forget.
I think, yeah, professors are amazing. One very recent thing, it happened like 2 weeks ago. I'm in Zainab Tom's class, who is amazing. Everybody should take a class with her. We were discussing, it's a management of services case, and a couple of us left the class being like still having some questions. Like it seemed like this company was like kind of in a vicious cycle spiraling down, and we were like, wondering like why do you not just stop that, right? Like, well, how do you keep yourself in the vicious cycle? So one of my classmates actually emailed her on our behalf, being like, why? Like we couldn't get it out of our heads. And she's like, oh, no worries. Like, let me call the CEO right now and find out. Let's just ask him. And I'm just like, what? Like, who does that? Let's just speed dial the CEO and ask him why his company was spiraling. Yeah, so that's a small example, but like that's just like how willing like professors are to like help you in your understanding and like reach out and like just like, I don't know, like nobody's ever answered that question like that to us. And she actually in front of the class like gave his answer like the next day. So that's a small example, but it just like shows you like how passionate they are about getting you like, fulfilling your curiosities, which is one of the reasons we're here.
All right, I want to shift gears a little bit because believe it or not, your MIT Sloan experience goes far beyond the classroom. So outside of the classroom, we have anywhere between 60 and 70 clubs in any given year, and that number fluctuates really based on student interest. We have from the most of social clubs, our favorite example is what we call the Happy Belly Club, which is a group of students who love to explore restaurants in the greater Boston area. We have a bunch of athletic clubs and sports clubs, and then we go all the way to the professional clubs. There's a consulting club, there's a PEVC club, there's an investing club. You name it. And if there isn't a club that interests you and you gather up enough interest for this club, there's actually ways in which you can start a club. So I was wondering if maybe a couple of you could talk about how you spent your time outside of the classroom and how you engaged.
I can start.
Go ahead. Why don't we have, let's just go down the line.
Cool. So for me, I came into Sloan, I think my first semester was kind of pretty focused on core and recruiting.
Oh, that's so good to hear.
I know, it's just the way it happened. But the couple of clubs that I was a part of, so I'm a vice president for the design club, which is focused on mostly design thinking and design tools. And we do a lot of educational events that teach people various classes from kind of intro to rapid prototyping to wireframing and user research, et cetera, for whatever kind of startup or entrepreneurial project they're doing. And then the other club, which is my first semester story, was I was part of the MCC, which is the Management Consulting Club, which I think dollar for dollar is like the most amount of utility you get out of any club. It's just incredibly well run. They basically assign you like a pilot and they do interviews with you and help you kind of navigate the consulting recruiting process. So those are kind of the two key areas. And then I'm also part of the South Asian Business Club, which is more of kind of a cultural club that hosts the South Asian Sea Function, which is happening in a few weeks. That's kind of how I spend my time. Sorry if you don't.
No, it's okay. Okay, so for me, during my time here, I'm actually married. I have 2 kids, so I've been pretty busy with work activities. So I didn't really spend my time, with I go to the clubs but I try not to lead them because I was extremely busy already. But at LGO, we have to participate on something. Like I'm actually participating in recruiting, so I do my best to be available whenever someone that need us so that we can get things done. But I being really busy, I sometimes ask myself how people like him do, because it's extremely busy, but they find the time to have a lot of fun, and I'm really amazed to see that. But I mean, I love soccer as well, so I play soccer. That part, I tell my wife, that soccer part, I gotta go do that, So yeah, so you can do anything here. It's incredible, and I think you mentioned that you can create a club, any club. If there is a club that you don't like, you want to start, you can start it yourself, So I love that part. But I even want to start a club with related to soccer, but it's a little too late already. You're ready to graduate. So thank you.
Cool. So I was also part of the MCC. I was a VP this year of education. So I think this is one of the things that I think you might talk about investment banking, similar thing, but like the recruiting clubs are really here. I think it's like one of those things that really sets us apart. Like, having a second year that was successful during the interview process, sit with you and walk you through the whole process. We have our own casebook that we edit every year. We make sure that every first year gets an X number of practice rounds with specific second years. Like, it's just like so well programmed that I think for me, like, I would have not survived recruiting had it not been for like the systematic, like I had no idea what consulting was. So I think like that, having that framework, and the PM club, for example, for product managers also has a really good program. So I think that that's one thing that to me was a huge differentiator when I was thinking of schools. In addition to that, I was part of the head of operations for the retail conference last fall, which was great. It was the second year that it happened. And it was a first conference ever, like our first year. So it was really good to be a part of that in the media lab. And it was like, it was just, I think I never like planned a conference since like undergrad, and that was like at a very different scale. So it was just like amazing when you put like a group of like 20 people together, the kind of production that you can come up with. And it got like a lot of press and stuff, which was really great. I'm also part of the Hispanic Business Club, which is a little bit more kind of like a social, but also there's like a recruiting and support aspect to it as well. We want to make sure that people that come here feel supported, have a community, and also make sure that like, we're kind of putting ourselves out there and helping others outside of the community as well, or that want to be part of the community. Other than that, I signed up for like every club ever because I love going to things. So I'm a member of the design club. I learned a lot. I'm a member of like Happy Belly. So I go to a lot of restaurants. They also have like sometimes like they just partnered with the Food and Agriculture Club to do a panel of restaurateurs in Boston that also like are big into social responsibility, which was really cool. You can be a part of anything, and you can put in as much time or as little time as you want, and you can get a lot out of it here.
So one thing Sahej forgot to mention is he's the CBC for our Ocean, the community building chair. So he's responsible for making sure that we like have a cohesive social life and hang out together.
Do you want to back up and explain that? I realize we mentioned oceans twice, and I did not do a good job early on. So talk a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, our class of 400 is broken up into groups of about 60, and we take all of our core classes with them. And each of those groups is broken into core teams of 6-ish students who we do all of our group work with throughout that first core semester. So we wind up building these really strong relationships with our core team members and our entire ocean or cohort. They're not all oceans. Some of them are seas.
Seas. Masquerading.
Bodies of water.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a really great part of the core experience that we take with us through the MBA and beyond. So I am a senator for my ocean. I was elected by my ocean to represent a portion of the student body and student government. So that's one of the things that I do. My focus is on admissions. One of the things that I did sort of last semester, and it's happening now, is Admitted Students Weekend. So organizing the students and making sure that the 100 and something admitted students who show up for the weekend have a really amazing time. I did, which is sort of why I do it. What else do I do? I also had a great experience through the investment banking club. The recruiting process is very daunting. When you lay out all of the things that you need to do in the beginning, it can feel kind of impossible. And so the club does a great job of breaking down the requirements and sort of giving you one thing at a time so you don't feel too overwhelmed. And I am looking forward to leading that next year. Hopefully they let me do that. I think those are all of the things that I can think of at this point. Black Business Students Association. So we work closely with the Hispanic Business Club and have the same mission, basically.
Great, thank you. So we've been talking now for about 35 minutes, and I believe we have yet to really touch upon what makes our school and our program so unique, which is in fact the MIT and MIT Sloan. As an MIT Sloan student, you have access to clubs, conferences, courses, competitions throughout the Institute. In fact, if you decide to live on campus, and there's a lot of different options for housing on campus, off campus, but if you decide to live on campus, there's no guarantee that your roommate would be an MIT Sloan student. Your roommate could possibly be a PhD in physics. You have the ability to take classes throughout the Institute and vice versa. So you could be in an advanced finance course, again, sitting next to somebody who's a PhD in chemical engineering who happens to want to also learn finance. The opportunities for you are endless, and a lot of this really depends on you, your personal interests. LGO is probably one of the best examples of the interdisciplinary nature of MIT Sloan with MIT. But I was wondering if perhaps a few of you could talk about things that you've done to really take advantage of this and have really extended what you've done beyond just the walls of MIT Sloan.
So as I mentioned, I am trying to be an LGO very hard, so I'm taking a lot of Core 6 classes. Just taking Python this semester, taking machine learning next semester, and then AI this following semester after that is the plan. We'll see how it goes. But in addition to that, I also am part of Sandbox. So if, for those who don't know, as part of like the entrepreneurial ecosystem, if you have an idea for a startup or a product or a service or whatever, you can apply for funding to Sandbox, which is an MIT-wide thing, and they'll basically give you, through some magic algorithm, they'll give you a number between like $0 to $25,000 of just play money to like figure out what to do with it. So you can use that for things like market research, prototyping, kind of hiring people to help out, bringing people onto your team, et cetera, and it's semester by semester basis. So if you get 10,000 one semester and you figure out it's a great idea and you want to quit everything and do it, like you can get additional funding. So it basically lasts your whole time here. And it's a great way to meet students from across MIT. So like we'll go to meetings, a bunch of us bright-eyed business students will go there, and there'll be a bunch of other engineering students. So it's a really good way to meet people from across the campus. And I think MIT in general is probably kind of ground zero for a lot of the greatest things that are happening in the world of technology. So it's a great place to just be, even if you're not taking a class, you can take it as a listener, which basically means you can just sit in and not have to be graded for it. And it's a great time to just go and just absorb. It's super cool.
Okay, so Okay, so like, as I mentioned to you guys earlier, I'm married and 2 kids. So I used to live at Westgate, which is a housing for family. So you get to meet people from different background, and people also a PhD student, master program, and so I'm a soccer guy. So all these guys that love soccer, they all know me about it. So we make sure that we get together. So because of soccer, we get to be in a good relationship. And I also take some engineering classes, as I mentioned to you guys earlier. With that, you get to have people, students from different departments that you get the opportunity to share knowledge with and interact with. It's very good.
Yeah, so I'm kind of not as plugged into the whole MIT. I think one thing that I will say is that I spent the past like 10 years in Boston. I did my undergrad here too. So I feel like, and having been in the startup world for 5 years, I feel like MIT was already like a part of me before. Like one of the startups I work with was affiliated with a Media Lab. So I feel like in that sense, like I've been kind of always around the MIT environment. I focus most of my coursework in Sloan just giving my own goal to like kind of beef up that like business toolkit. But you still kind of find yourself all the time kind of interbred into the MIT environment. I'm taking an art class right now, which has like 2 PhDs in math, like an undergrad, like somebody who's like just a person working in Cambridge and is an alum. So there's like stuff like that. I just did a hackathon. There was only one other Sloanie on my team because they were like randomized teams out of 10 people, which is amazing. So I think like even when you're not like actively seeking out, the community kind of like bleeds into your life in a good way. It kind of gives you a little bit exposure to something really different. I think in the hackathon perspective, it was so interesting to be like, I've done hackathons before that are Sloan only, and I feel like we all kind of just like hive mind, like get it done, and like having a group of very different people, very different backgrounds, like more than 30 years apart. Like I had an undergrad and somebody with like more than 25 years in experience in my team. That was just so mind blowing. Like the thought process and the organization around is so different. We still came up with something which is amazing and presented it. But yeah, anyways, my point is like the MIT community's there even when you're not like actively taking classes and whatnot. It kind of bleeds into your life in a very positive way.
So I haven't done too much exploring outside of Sloan yet, but it is definitely a part of my plan. In the fall, I'm looking forward to taking some classes at the Real Estate Institute. We're allowed to cross-register at Harvard too, so there's a lot of opportunity to explore beyond Sloan. It can be really easy to sort of focus in. There's a lot going on here. Like there's more than you could possibly do within the bounds of Sloan itself, so you have to be pretty deliberate to get out. But yeah, tons of opportunity, and it's a pretty exciting place to be.
Great. All right. Want to talk a little bit about careers. So we know very well that the majority of you come to Sloan to go to business school to help advance your career. We have a career development office that works with you from day one to help position you to ensure your success, not just for that summer internship and not even just for that first job, but for really a career of a lifetime of successful career changes, if that's something that you want. They work with you on cover letter and resumes. They work with you on your elevator pitch, helping you understand really what it is that you're looking to do and therefore what the network of companies might be that would offer opportunities for you. They recognize, and I think this is a really important point, that in this day and age, what people want to do in many cases is so specific and so personalized. I was going to say curated, which I think is a buzzword of the day, isn't it? I used to think that only applied to museums, and now I actually see that word used like for everything. I get these emails saying, we've curated this list of items for you. But nonetheless, you know what I'm saying, really tailored and customized to your specific interests. And what they also do is they really engage and exercise our alumni network. And I know our Alumni Slides been up for a while, but it's such a powerful slide. I like to have it in the background for you to understand when you become part of this community, just what that means, not just for now, but for a lifetime. I was wondering, and it doesn't have to be all of you, but if a couple of you could talk about how you did in fact secure either your summer job or your permanent job, and what, if any, engagement you had with the Career Development Office.
I can start.
Yeah.
So the Career Development Office and the Investment Banking Club actually work very closely together to partner with companies who come to campus and recruit here. Goldman happens to be one of the companies that does come to campus. And so like we got to actually go visit Goldman. That was something that the CDO helped organize along with a couple other places in New York. We all took a bus down. That sort of facilitation was one of the things, one of the sort of touch points we had with them. But I also went to them when I first got to campus and needed to rewrite my resume. Got a lot of read from them and a lot of, all right, so this is your plan. What's your plan B? But they were very invested in my process, and so I got to know a good handful of people who work in the CDO. And so when I did finally get an internship, I also got a lot of hugs. And those are people who I'll continue to be in contact with. Over Admitted Students Weekend, they came and gave a presentation to the significant others of Sloan who are also very important to this community. And I was kind of shocked to see that all of the things that they offer us in terms of cover letter help and guidance and connections, they also offer to the significant others. Like they're just very invested in making sure that people who come here come out and are successful in whatever it is they want to do, whatever transition they're trying to make.
Anyone else?
I interacted with the CDO for quite a bit. At points it was like therapy because I would walk in and be like, I don't know what I want to do, and like, should I go back to consulting? Should I do tech? Blah, blah, blah. So I had a ton of sessions with them, which was awesome. Did a lot of the resume work. CDO also, before you get started, they give you access to a ton of great online resources that you can kind of get to orient yourself. So it's like there's this magical tool called VMOC,
Yeah.
which I don't know how it works, but it's amazing. You basically upload your resume and it just coaches you how to make it like the best resume ever. But things like those really help you hit the ground running. So by the time we come, I think employers don't show up to school for the first month. That's kind of our like cocoon time where we get to like understand what business school is. but starting October 1st, floodgates open, and it can be quite overwhelming. So I use the CDO pretty often just to kind of check the fact that, like, am I headed the right way? What do I need to do? Like, what happens if I do X, Y, or Z? So they actually helped me on both of my adventures, both for tech and consulting, and just let me decide when I got any offers. But super helpful, always available. You can, like, it's super easy to schedule appointments. It's just like a simple online website. You can just sign up for like an hour. I did behavioral interview mocks, case interview mocks, basically everything they had to offer, and it's highly recommended.
One point that you mentioned that the CDO, there were a couple ladies over there where, you know, making sure that they call you actually, and they go through your resume with you, and then they make sure that your resume is the way that, you know, will help you get a job, you know. So I was really surprised with that. Usually when I contact someone, you know, when I was in high school, I contact someone to help me with my resume. They don't usually, you know, call you and then I'll go over. They go to line by line with you. And even though you use that VMAC program, they still go line by line and make sure that your resume is the way it will sound better for you to get a job. And it works really, really well.
I think the one thing I'll add is, and not to hunker on resumes so much, but I thought I had pretty strong resume bullet point wise. One thing that I didn't think about is like the overall package that you're trying to portray, and like just like kind of like you think about your like personal brand when you're applying to business school. It's just as important when you're recruiting. And one thing that they did is they completely like took out the sequential order of my resume, and they were like, you should be a skills-based resume. You're doing such a huge transition. Like they don't even care if you were like a database marketing analyst for 4 years and like right to go. Like right, like you need to translate this more into like what are the actual like tangible skills that you're gonna bring. So like I took out dates like and everything, and like it became like a skills-based thing. So like skills and bullet points, and like I had never thought of, like that was like a complete redo of like this thing that I was like pretty proud of. I was like, I have a pretty strong resume. And like the reason why I mentioned that is because like thinking about like they have an idea of just like how creative you can get with these things and still fulfill like the expectations of an employer in a way that puts your best light forward. So even if you have like the strongest bullets ever, like the way they're ordered, the way they're grouped, the way they're presented can make a huge difference. And that's like a small example, but like they can do that for a lot more things.
All right, we're gonna shift gears for a little bit. Don't go away, and I'm gonna give you a quick homework assignment. So we're gonna talk a little bit now about the application process. I'd love for each of you to think about one word or phrase that best describes your MIT Sloan experience to date. Okay? For the rest of you though, let's talk a little bit about the application process. So this is the application from this year. My guess is that for the most part, it will be very, very similar. So for those of you who are here thinking about next year, I think going through this is a worthwhile exercise. What's really important to note, and I promise you this is not going to change, is there are no tricks. Our whole evaluation process has in fact been designed for us to get to know you, and over the course of time actually for you to get to know us as well. There's no wrong answers to any of these questions, and it's pretty straightforward. So we ask for a resume, we ask for a cover letter. And in the cover letter, we're asking you, just like you would do for a job, to explain to us why we should admit you to MIT Sloan. The cover letter has a word limit. It's 300 words. And so we completely understand that you're not going to be able to tell us everything about yourself, but tell us enough that we want to know more. All right? An org chart. Okay, so the org chart, something new this past year. And it is, what we want to know is sort of where you fit in within the organization, within your specific role and responsibilities. So for example, if you happen to work for a consulting firm, we do not want the org chart off the website that says analyst, consultant, manager, whatever. We want perhaps from one of your most recent projects, where you fit in, who you reported to, if you had some direct reports. There's no right or wrong answer here. And it just helps provide some context with us. For those of you who may be, you know, you have your own startup or working on your own independently. What we've seen some people do, which is helpful, is there's you and then there's dotted lines to other entities, other organizations, other resources with whom you might interact. Okay? 2 letters of recommendation. We ask for them both to be professional. We would love for one of them to be from an immediate supervisor. However, if you are not ready to tell your supervisor that you're going to business school, we understand that. What we want are 2 people who can really speak to the impact that you have made on an organization. We do not want, these are not peer reviews, so please do not ask a friend, please do not ask a relative. If you happen to be part of a family business, again, please don't ask a relative. Think of somebody within the organization, think of a client, think of a customer. Somebody who can really speak in detail and who's willing to take the time to write a meaningful letter of recommendation. I would suggest that that's one of the first things you do is think about who you want for your recommenders, reach out to them early, give them enough time to think about it, even sit down with them and explain to them why you want to go to business school. The only thing that I strongly encourage you not to do is please do not write the recommendation for them. We have seen in many instances someone say, I'm happy to, you know what, I'm really busy. Why don't you draft something for me and I will sign it. That is not what we are looking for. And you can use us as the bad guy. You can say, you know, schools have said, please do not do that. And the reality is there's software available today. There's actually a detector embedded in our software that can identify some common phraseologies and things that would happen without you even realizing it. That could potentially flag. And while it may not be a complete knockout factor, it's just not something that's worth casting some kind of doubt on your whole application. So just say no. And if this person's not willing to spend the time, then find somebody else. All right, 2 letters of recommendations. Transcripts from all schools that contributed to you receiving your degrees, whether that be an undergraduate or a graduate degree. I say that because many people spend a semester or a year abroad somewhere, they travel, we want to see those grades. GMAT or GRE, a valid GMAT or GRE, we do not care. And by that, I mean we don't care which one you took. It's not that we don't care about your score. We do care. It has to have been taken within the last 5 years. We then have our video statement. So this will be our 3rd year for the video statement. What we're doing is, it's very simple. Introduce yourself to your future classmates in 60 seconds or less. We are not looking for a production grade. You don't need to hire a crew. You know, you may use your iPhone, have a friend hold it for you, use a stand for it. That's not what it's about. It's really about, you know, thinking about what's important to you that your future classmates know about you. I pretty much guarantee we will have this again. It's one of those things that it sounds really easy on a certain way. Did you all do them? I can't remember how far back. You didn't have to. No. So we started last year. Once you though start thinking about it, it gets a little bit, you have to spend a little bit of time reflecting on what's important to you. And then the optional is truly now optional in terms of, is there anything that you think is important for us to know that's not on your application? And in most cases at this point, is there a huge gap in employment? Was there extenuating circumstances in my undergrad that I feel you need to know? If, as an undergrad, you might have started off a little slow and then your grades got better and better as you got more comfortable, you do not need to explain that to us. No surprise. It's something we see pretty often. So don't worry about that. So the application, I'm going to show you this year's dates. Next year's will be similar within probably a week of every one of our deadlines. I'll show those in a minute. I strongly encourage you to apply as early as possible. Not because we have quotas, but because we don't have quotas. So very simply, in round 1, we have 350 seats to fill, correct? In round 2, I don't know how many seats we'll have, but I guarantee you it's less than 350. And so to the extent that you're here today, you're thinking about applying next year, I strongly encourage you to apply early. Our application will go live around I think it's July 1st. We usually try to go live with the MBA application. Our first deadline will most likely be sometime mid-September. So these are this year's dates, keep in mind. It should give you plenty of time. If, however, though, for some reason you're not able to apply in round 1, I don't think that means, and I'm not telling you it means you have to wait a whole year, because unless you apply in round 1, then you're not going to get in. That's not the case at all. You know, in fact, we're in the midst of round 2 right now. We have an amazing pool of incredibly talented applicants who we are eager to interview. So it doesn't mean you're not going to get in, but we're sitting here today talking about, you know, what, you know, I don't want to say competitive advantages because that's not really it. But again, encouraging you to apply early. We do have 3 rounds. I really think round 1 or round 2. So, okay, with that, we have 5 minutes. This always happens. I'm going to go back to you all, and then maybe we'll take a question or two. We're very sensitive to your time because we know a lot of you have to go to work. So we will stop at 9. If a couple of you can hang around and maybe you could ask questions on your own, that's great. But let's go back to you all.
We start with Asia.
Okay, let's start with Asia. One word or phrase that doesn't need explanation to describe your MIT Sloan experience to date.
I was so caught up listening to you, I forgot one of the words.
I believe that.
Well, I'll share the 2 that I remember, which were transformational and affirming.
Mine was adventure.
Mine's love.
Wow. Mine is fire hose. So, yeah, should have done it the way.
Okay, great. Ian, do we have a question or two from our audience around the world?
Touch base about interviews and Skype and all that quickly.
Oh, my goodness, I forgot. Okay, so once you submit your application, oh, I can't believe I forgot this. A subset of people will then be invited for an interview. Interviews are by invitation only and a required next step in the process. We pretty much traveled the globe. We went to about 15 cities in round 1. I think we're going to 10 or 12 in round 2 to be close to critical mass of people for in-person interviews. They last somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. I promise you that the length of time of your interview has very little indication on whether or not you're going to get an offer or not. We read these blogs. We know people post anything and everything. And when my interview was 22 minutes, does that mean they didn't like me? You know what? It means we could have loved you right off the bat and didn't need to any more time. So please, roughly 30 to 45 minutes. There's a large portion of it are behavioral questions. So tell me about a time that you were on a team where one of your teammates wasn't pulling his or her weight. What was the situation? What did you do to turn it around? We ask a variety of those types of questions. We may ask some very specific questions about your application to fill in some gaps. And then we will give you the opportunity to ask us any and all questions. With regard to a Skype interview, so we really reserve Skype for extenuating circumstances. We certainly grant them. I think in this day and age, technology is so much better. There's not that big a difference. But nonetheless, if it's possible to do the personal experience, we love that. Also, everybody who's invited for an interview, regardless of the location where we specify, is invited to come to Cambridge. So you can always come here for your interview, make a day of it, especially if you haven't visited campus. If it aligns well with our ambassadors program, you can then sit in on a class and you'll always be able to have lunch with students. And so that's an option open to anyone and everyone who's invited for an interview as well. How's that?
Great, wonderful.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take one from here. Let's take, anybody here have a question? Yes. And please feel free to direct it to them.
This is for the whole panel.
Yep.
So a couple years ago, I got my master's in engineering, and I was able to maintain a full-time job while doing that. Do you guys see that being feasible at all? No.
No.
Oh, so can we just repeat that? Because I'm not sure others heard. So the question was whether or not it's feasible to work full-time while pursuing your MBA, correct? Was that the question?
No. I don't know, but I don't even know how I'm gonna describe the no in front of me. No way you can do it. No way.
It's quite a all-consuming experience. Sure. And especially if you are taking the time, taking the financial investment to come here, to maximize the effect, I would not want to. There's plenty of ways you can get professional experience through labs, etc., but like I would not recommend. I think it's impossible.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely impossible to do a full-time MBA and work. I can spend 12 hours a day here in this building. Core is particularly crazy, but I thought it would get less intense, and so far it hasn't.
That's self-choice.
But yeah, that's true. The other thing, though, is what you would wind up sacrificing is the time that you would be spending with your classmates, building relationships. And I mean, the reality is for certain class content, you don't need to be in a classroom. You can take classes online.
Right.
Not necessarily all of it. I think there are certain classes where that is the case. Like if you want to go learn, I don't know, some finance class or something like that. But what's really important is to have those interactions with your classmates outside of the classroom and build those relationships. Like that is definitely a part of what we come here for. And it winds up taking up a lot more time than you would think it would. So I wouldn't want to lose that. The other thing is you really do wind up building value for yourself as somebody who's employable coming out of here. And so like you're going to, even if you have to take the whole thing out in loans, you're going to be financially okay when you leave here.
Thank you.
You're going to miss the opportunity to meet all the beautiful people. So yeah, just don't do it. You know, make sure you come and stay for 2 years.
Okay, I think I'm going to wrap up the formal part. I want to thank our incredible panel for getting up this morning and sharing your stories and experiences with us. I want to thank all of you, both in the room and around the globe, from joining us this morning. Hopefully you liked what you heard and you want to hear more, and there's many ways for you to do so. I mentioned our ambassadors program where you can come, you can attend a class, have lunch with current students, spend a little bit of time with someone from our office, getting some further application tips. We do monthly online chats, we host webinars, we have these info sessions every month with a different cast of characters, so you are welcome to come back and hear different stories from our students, and we look forward to receiving each and every one of your applications. So thank you.
Thank you.
So good.